All right, we're gonna try and go over how to use the calculator here. Gonna have a couple things in front of us. Got one parent log from Newton we're gonna use, and we're gonna transform it to show that it both works. And then we've got Desmos in the background with both of those graphed out just to prove to ourselves that it works on our calculator. First thing you do, if you've been mucking around with your calculator and all the, you may have set some weird settings, put it in a different function or something, you may wanna go on the back. And if you have a newer one like this, hit that reset button, just get it back to factory settings. This one I'm not sure about. I think it's under the battery compartment. I couldn't find it anywhere else, but just to be sure, unless you know what you're doing, may want to reset it back to factory settings. So we're gonna need to make sure we've got a couple things set up the way we need it to be. Go ahead and turn it on. First thing you wanna do is you wanna go into your table settings. So you hit second, table settings. And you see mine's set to -3 right now for some reason, but I'm just gonna go ahead and clear that out and then tell it to start at 0. You want these to also be on auto. So if you want to change it, just move it over and hit enter and it'll change it over, but just leave them in auto. To get out of that, you can do second quit. Once you've done that, we're gonna go into our graphing portion of it. So we wanna hit Y right here. And I'll go ahead and delete these because I had them in there already. And to enter our parent function here of log 4, remember if you just were to hit log, it's just going to give you a log base of 10. In order to get to the other log functions, you need to make sure your computer or your calculator is updated to the latest firmware. If you have an older one like this or a silver version, it may not be updated enough to be able to do anything besides base 10. So do that. So in order to get that in there, we're gonna go to our math button here. We're gonna hit math and we're gonna scroll down to where it says log base. Once you do that, hit the enter button at the bottom. You see it's gonna put it in there. So log, and then we're gonna put in 4 because that's part of our function. Then we're gonna go over, and then where our exponent thing is, we're just gonna hit X. All right, so that is basically it for entering a function. Once you do that, you don't really have to touch it, just double check that you made sure it's right. We have log 4 of X, that's good. Now the next thing you wanna do, this thing will go ahead and graph it for you. So if you wanna hit this button right here, it says graph, it'll spit it out. And we know it's right because we can reference it here, the blue line on Desmos. So we're right on that. You can see on Desmos, the line continues down because it continues to graph. Like she said, you gotta watch these calculators. They'll stop graphing once it gets to a certain point towards your vertical or horizontal asymptote. But for this, it gives you an idea of what's going on, so you can tell which direction. So, you know, whether it's a growth or decay or whatever. So this is beneficial if you're trying to graph it once you get your points, but the biggest thing that this thing does is it automatically goes ahead and finds your points. So you want to hit second and this button here that gives you your tables. And here on the left-hand side is your X values. You know how you would write a table where you would do X 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you would actually have to go through the calculations to get out all these answers? It does it for you. It takes the previous function that we put in, inputs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to all the way 10. You can even press up and it'll go into the negative values. And you see error. The reason you see that is because we have that vertical asymptote. It's not going to cross that. So anything past 0 is not going to go. So keep on going down, and you can cross-reference. Remember, for these, we always have like 1, 0 or 0, 1. Well, you can see on our graph here, it crosses right here at 1, 0. So that again proves that we're doing what we're supposed to. To get our other point, we're looking at 4, 1 is a nice, another easy one. And again, if we look at Desmos, we go over to 4 and up 1, and we also see it intersects. And if we go to our graph, we can trace. You hit the trace button and then just go over until the left-hand side gets to 4. And it's approximate, but you can also see when X is at 4, y is at 1, which lines up with everything. So that is a real easy way to get back to it. You hit second table to come up with all these stuff without having to manually do it over and over. So you could, if you wanted to, and then again, to get back to where you enter in the function, you just hit Y on the top left. You get back to your parent function. If you wanted to not do the transformation via the calculator and wanted to do it manually, you could have taken those points that we just had in our table. So second table. You could take these points here and they just make you your new Y. So for this one, well, for X's for this one, because we're actually going to transform it X plus 3, which means X minus 3. So you would just make your table with those values, but you don't really have to, because again, the calculator can do it for you too. So you go back into, you hit Y, go back to your function. Where X was, we want to do an X plus 3. So we literally do X plus 3. We double check it, it's still good. It says log 4, X plus 3, and we hit graph. And you can see it did move over 3 spots to the left. We were over here earlier, now we're here. And if you look at Desmos, they're both graphed right now, so you can see both of them, but the blue one is our parent and our green one is our transform function. So you can see that it works. And when we go back to our numbers, to get back to your table, if you're gonna graph it on the test or whatever, you hit second table, and here's our transform numbers. So you can see that these numbers have changed. We used to have 4, 1, and then now it's done changed over to the transform numbers. So it's not that hard to do. I talked to her, I talked to the teacher and the SI, and they said that as long as you're not taking any other maths, you're not hurting yourself by doing it this, they're completely fine with that. That was all of it in a new calculator. I'll show you what it looks like in the old one. So again, this one's been freshly wiped. I'll go to Y. This is kind of hard to see in this. Let me delete this function out. All right, so if this was freshly done, we would do math, go down to where it says log base, hit enter, and we're gonna do 4, because that's part of our function. We're gonna go over and we're gonna hit X plus 3, and then make sure the parentheses are closed. And at this point, you just hit graph. And it's not gonna look as good as this, but it's the same thing. And it's the same as Desmos, as you can see there. So we've moved it, 3 places to the left. The thing about this, this window, if you end up getting it zoomed in right, so the zoom button is right here. If you hit zoom and just say we've zoomed in to a spot where it's not showing you anything, I'll just move somewhere random. It's gonna redraw the graph, which takes a second. And I'll get time to do that. But then if you're not seeing anything, you're not squared up on your thing, you just hit zoom and then 6, which is your standard zoom, and it'll bring it back out where it needs to. If you need to, say you want to see something in this particular area here, you want to get real close and you want to trace this line, go to zoom, and it's already selected Z-box, you hit enter, and you can see this cursor. It's kind of hard to see. You can see the cursor moves left and right on the screen. Little tiny cursor right there. So you basically move over to a spot, hit enter, and then as I move down and over, you can see it draws a box. And it's basically like zooming in if you were able to pinch it. So I want to look at that area in close, and then once you get it where it needs to be, you hit enter again. It's going to zoom in where that was, and it's going to redraw the graph. And then the way that's beneficial is we now can hit trace. So right now, if I were to move this cursor, it can go willy-nilly all over the place. It's not giving very good beneficial information, but if you want to actually follow this line, hit trace, and it will lock it to the line. So as you go left and right, you can follow your numbers on the bottom, your X values and your Y values, and if you're trying to see where it intersects something, like this is pretty close to 2 and 1 right here. You can actually follow it across and you can see where it's there and there and where it lines up. So hope it helps.